Anyone who's played music from childhood will feel the fact that you can still do it and the fact that it's still part of your life, decades on, is amazing.
This is my son, Roy. Hello. That's Liz.
Lovely to meet you.
Dean.
You know, when I play, there's 8-year-old me with a recorder. You know, there's 15-year-old me getting my first saxophone. Like, they're all still there, playing away now. And there's still this guy trying to go, oh, wow, how do you do that?
Well, hello. I think the normal thing for people of our maturity, when we get together, we usually start with a little health update, don't we? Last year I had esophageal cancer. It was a pretty heavy diagnosis, and the original proposed treatment was we chop it out. Oh, the tumour? Nope, the esophagus. We're going to take the whole thing out and chuck it away. And he went...
It was terrifying when he got the diagnosis. I thought, well, if they're going to snip out his esophagus and stitch him up, what does that mean for his playing? And I thought that would be a heartbreak for him.
But then, as is my want, I tended to talk about it. And so I went on air, I spoke about it.
Well, this is a bit of a strange moment for me and probably for you. I've got to go off and deal with something. And the thing I've got to go off and deal with is cancer.
It never occurred to us, as I think it wouldn't occur to many people, to think there's an alternative treatment.
I heard from a group of doctors in Westmead Hospital who came back to me and said, we don't do that. We'll just take the tumour out, we'll have a look at you. I said, the esophagus? You can keep it.
When he got the option to not do it or to try something else, he was pretty ecstatic and pretty like, let's go.
Being able to play again when it looked like this was the thing that was most likely to be taken away. It's an unbelievable joy.
So this morning you're speaking in Parkside Ballroom 1, which is just over there.
Okay then. All right, what am I saying?
This whole process, in terms of the medical stuff, it's made me reflect a lot on how we get medical information.
I think I've had a bit of this stuff down me at some point.
I mean, here I am, somebody who's at the centre of information, who could talk about it publicly and then get a response. What do you do if you don't have that? How do you deal with this stuff?
Whoa. What do you think? Esophagus or Great Barrier Reef? Woo! I mean, it's marvellous what they can do, isn't it?
People are in a dilemma. They don't know who the best in the area is. They've got to somebody they trust, but there are choices. And how do you make the right choice?
Is it okay if we show some slides of your resection?
Yeah.
We invited James because it was a great opportunity to get the patient's perspective from someone who's very good at communicating and to learn that, we can do better.
Actually. So many of you will recognise James. He's a beloved Australian radio presenter and musician. He's going to talk today with us about his journey.
Can I just say, what a great part of the journey has been to end up here. I've never heard so much discussion of the rectum in my life.
Right.
So, riveting.
What was the thing that made you select one approach versus the other?
I got it down to, really nothing more than, well, I can do yours first, right? There's a point at which the patient can't understand the information.
Yep.
In fact, I was dealing with two people who were both right. That was part of the confusion.
So this is Ballarat in Victoria, where I grew up. Well, I'm here to go and visit my mother and say hi, which I do every few months. She's 98. She became a broadcaster when she was 18 in 1945, straight after the war. It is this sort of from a young age, I'm very familiar with radio studios.
Nina, his mum, explains James to me because she also was a radio broadcaster. She was a very fiercely independent woman for the time.
So we've dug up your past, okay?
Good heavens.
Found everything.
She was a very formal kind of announcer. She was a champion at elocution. But she also starts submitting stuff to the ABC and ends up a stringer for Australia All Over, which is Macca's program now.
This is the judge's report for you.
Oh.
Recitation, boys and girls over 10 and under 13 years.
Oh.
Judge's comments, pretty voice and bright facial expression.
Good heavens. What happened to that? I think I must have been born a little show-off.
Yeah. Gosh, where did I get it from?
There was no other musicality in the family. I don't know where it came from, except for the fact that he had to distinguish himself from these two sporty older brothers.
So I started playing music at school when they handed out the recorders. I went back the next week and I could play the tunes, and they're going, it's interesting, no one's ever done that before.
I think once you start playing woodwind, then you go through the whole range. Once he hit saxophone, he realised that that was his great love.
But I also started to listen to jazz, and I just went, oh, that's interesting. By the time I finished high school, I could study music, is that all right? And my parents, to their eternal credit, really, were sure, if that's what you want to do, that's fine.
I met James at the beginning of 1983. We were both musicians, but we were studying together. He didn't seem to know that much about pop music or rock music. James's heart was back in the 40s to 60s, bebop jazz.
I was very anxious to be a working musician. What I wanted to be was a great jazz player, but I also wanted to figure out how you earned money.
Bad is good, the good's forever.
I heard from somebody, Joe Camilleri's putting a band together, and so I turned up, auditioned, and got a gig. And so I go up and down the east coast of Australia for 12 months, basically playing full-time with these incredibly experienced musicians. I could feel that mainly the rock thing was working. It was good money. I kind of fell into the models from that.
And now, here's the big one, Barbados!
James joins the Models, and the first record he plays on, he plays a saxophone solo, and it's a very good saxophone solo, and the song shoots up the charts.
It just it took off. So it was a strange kind of thing. I didn't mean it to happen. I wasn't really part of the band as such. They were making all the band type decisions. I was hanging around. I'd play a lot of table tennis. I got very good at table tennis, and then I'd go and do some sax solos, and then off we'd go on the road. It was fantastic. It was very fun.
The next single they put out is Out of Mind, Out of Sight, and it's smothered in horns, and it goes straight to number one. James' addition to that band, we were worried it was going to ruin the band, but it really helped make the band.
We then toured the US for about 6 or 8 months. We were exhausted. And tours at that point didn't stop. I don't know that I've got a brain left at this point. I think I've stewed it, and I'm not enjoying this. I'd also met my wife by this point, now wife Joanne. I was like, and she's looking at me like, are you going to be this, idiot rock guy forever?
James Valentine from the Models and Friends. Who are your friends, James?
This is Wayne and this is Joanne.
It was just impossible to have a regular relationship. So he decided that he would come back and audition for the afternoon show. Everyone in Sydney went for the audition, and he ended up getting it.
Hi, welcome to the afternoon show.
When Afternoons finished, he ended up in commercial television, and it didn't fit his personality.
I got a job on Channel 10 as the entertainment reporter. It was a bit like being on the rock tours. I was drifting into an area I didn't necessarily want to be in.
It's coming up to 3 o'clock here on Canberra's 2CN.
Then he realised radio's where it's at, because radio is just instant. He could have this connection with the audience, but without all the fuss of TV.
Yeah. It's time for Vet Talkback with Mike Haywood.
That very first shift I did, my memory is that I just went, yes, I love this. This is fantastic. Much of this is the product of my mother. I watched her doing it. I therefore felt quite comfortable when I got there.
2754 666 our number if you've got any questions or queries about the beast in your life.
James just talks to the audience. He talks one-on-one, which is textbook broadcasting. And there's like a madness to James as well, which is very, very funny. And he allows that to come through, and he's unembarrassed by it.
Welcome to ABC Radio Sydney, is where it all happens. I like to have my own image everywhere I go, just to remind myself who I am.
I've been doing this shift for nearly 3 decades.
See, that's how easy it is doing radio. I just swan in. Jen and Hannah have done it all, and I go, sure, and on we go.
And so it means that you've got an audience that's, you've been part of their life. I've talked about everything that's happened to me. They've told me everything that's happened to them.
We'll do our session where we look at etiquette and things at 1:30 today, the done thing.
It took me a year or two for me to feel confident enough to go, you know what, I'm just going to go for the silly stuff that's in my head.
What does your partner use to floss her teeth?
She uses her hair. The best part about it is that they're extensions.
I still felt I had to interview the police commissioner or something, and it wasn't until I threw all that out that I started to go, right, here's a stupid segment.
We have This Is What I Live With, and that's when you call about the annoying thing that your partner does.
Things are getting worse. Every night my husband sits on a special chair in the dark and the possum jumps on his lap and he grooms her with a special comb and she sits there for
James listens to what the guest is saying and responds in that moment. He's not scared of improvising.
I do a thing on the radio called This Is What I Live With, which is about couples, and the standard thing that no couple can agree on is how to stack your dishwasher.
I really disagree with the way you stack
There you go. You really
but I
disagree.
don't say anything.
So what should it be?
It should be the way I do it.
Okay. Don't let me stop you. Perhaps if you did it more often, you could do it how you want.
It was only sort of November 2023 that I had the first symptom. So there was a couple of moments when I had trouble swallowing, and I just went, oh, I'm an old man, I'm getting indigestion. Then I had a night at a party where I sort of scoffed this food. I ended up outside the footpath, like hanging onto a pole and kind of vomiting and like, whoa, that's bad.
I was like, well, that's odd. So I immediately rang my sister who manages an endoscopy clinic, told her, and she was like, right, we're getting him down, we'll have a look. And we just all assumed that it was going to be nothing much.
I wake up and I can see this line of people all looking at me with a really concerned look, and it's like, I'm lying there going, that's not good. The gastroenterologist comes over and says, well, we found a tumour. Again, I think it's just impossible to take in. Everybody would say this, with these sort of diagnoses, it happens so quickly. You've gone from someone who doesn't have cancer to someone who has cancer.
We had a meeting with the surgeon at St Vincent's, and he was telling us that he needed to take out his esophagus.
When the data was presented at the multidisciplinary team meeting at St Vincent's, it was thought that he had advanced esophageal cancer, and then with the PET scan showing an increased uptake in one of the lymph nodes, that was very concerning. At that time, the preferred protocol involved having chemotherapy and radiotherapy prior to having surgery.
There's nothing else that can be done for this. This is how it's being told to me at this point. So what we'll do then is we'll hoik your stomach up into your throat. No esophagus. Food will just, drop into your stomach.
It's a big operation. There are a lot of steps involved. And then the post-operative care is just as important. The intensive care team looks after these patients. There's about a 30% chance of some form of complication occurring.
He was really heading down the track of fairly radical surgery with significant illness attached to just the after effects of the surgery, nutrition, swallowing, and all those sorts of things. And it can be quite a somber prognosis. It does come back in a significant percentage of people. So it was very hard to comfort him in that situation.
So many of his main joys in life is, food and cooking for people and playing the saxophone and talking. And, that surgery had the potential to kind of take all of that away. So I think he was sort of looking at that, like, I so don't want to do that.
Afternoons with James Valentine on 702.
So I finished the chemo and radiation and I was booked in for the surgery, and I've got to figure out how to tell the audience. Again, showman. What's the show going to be?
Let me give you some mic. I was not surprised when he said he wanted to interview his surgeon and to broadcast that, because here's a significant thing that James is going through. Yes, he would share that with his audience, but in his characteristic, quirky, whimsical way.
Yes, so I'm sitting with Associate Professor Douglas Fenton Lee, and probably not that many of your patients come and interview you beforehand.
None.
But I'm about to trust you with the most extreme thing anybody could do to another human being.
Yeah, I know. It's. I've often thought about that.
There was a massive reaction to James's announcement. It so touched people, resonated with people.
This is my last program for a while. Going to go off, bit of a holiday, and then off I'll go and have surgery.
So as a family, we decided that we'd just take a week in Bali and say goodbye to James's esophagus.
That was pretty bad. That was a pretty bad holiday. You lost your job?
I lost my job the day we left.
I got long COVID. Mum got really sick.
Mum got COVID. You had barley belly. Dad had barley belly.
And then 2 days into that trip, a friend of mine emailed and said, look, there might be an alternative treatment to what James is going through.
When James declared on radio that he had esophageal cancer, James's esophagus became a topic of discussion amongst doctors in Sydney. I thought, I should at least reach out to him and offer him the opportunity for me to review his situation.
So there's 4 ulcers actually.
Just water jet.
I'm the Director of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy at Westmead Hospital in Sydney. One of the main things that we do is treat early cancer and advanced pre-cancer.
You see how far this tumour extends down into the stomach.
Endoscopy is a very common medical procedure that is used to examine the digestive tract, and we can use tiny instruments to remove tumours.
We're going to just peel this tumour away from the muscle.
I thought there was a chance that James could avoid surgery depending on how it looked, but only 15 to 20% of all esophageal cancer is early cancer. And so most people are not suitable to be treated in this way. We sought out all the original imaging and of course performed our own endoscopy. And it was my view at that time that he had an early stage tumour that was suitable for endoscopic resection. And there was no evidence of spread beyond the esophagus at that point.
So is this what Michael sent us?
Yeah.
I was explaining the data to him, and having listened to him on the radio, he's such a smart guy, I thought I'll just share all the medical literature.
In our study, expert Barrett's endoscopists reliably detected and distinguished early EAC, T1A, T1B disease from HGD with a pooled sensitivity of 89.1%.
And then I said, did you read all the studies? He said, yeah, but he said, I'm not a doctor. And then he said to me, what about if I give you music for playing jazz saxophone? Are you going to be able to understand that?
All of these figures, as soon as there's all those figures, my brain just glazes over and I can't.
Yeah.
I didn't really quite know what to make of it. I rang my surgeon, Doug Fenton Lee, and I said, well, what do you make of that?
Well, I said to him, look, if you want to explore it, then I think you should. Even though at the time I didn't think that James was suitable for endoscopic resection, we didn't think that he had an early esophageal cancer. The thickness and the length of the tumour was quite significant. The fact that he had lymph nodes enlarged indicated that he had a good chance of having lymph node involvement.
This is two absolute medical experts, two people who are top of their game, telling you two different things.
One was saying it was a tumour that had been there for a long time and that it, had grown into the muscle wall and it was at a stage that was necessary to take it all out. And then the other person was saying, I don't think it's been there that long. It's not that big. I've done bigger. It's fine. We can do this procedure.
I got it down to I can do Michael's first. If there's problems with my esophagus, I can go back to Doug. Once I told Doug, he went, well, yes, you can always come back to me. With some provisos.
One of the things that James said to me was that, we can always just operate if it comes back. But that's not always the case. You know, the tumour can spread somewhere where it's very difficult to remove.
I suppose I started to accept that I'm going to take on a level of risk here, and that I'm changing the nature of the risk. I started to see the nature of the risk of the esophagectomy was this quality of life that was quite probably not going to be very good. The nature of the risk with Michael was that I was quite likely to have to deal with cancer again, possibly within a few years. But even if I only get a short period of time and cancer occurs, that feels better. I'll do that.
We need at least 10 millimetre, yeah.
There was no cancer going in deeply. Of course, there was a lot of effect from the chemoradiotherapy.
Don't tap in, just irrigate there, irrigate.
When we received the pathology results for James's tumour, fortunately it was favourable, fully removed, clear margins and no lymphatic invasion and so on. So very suitable to be followed by close surveillance.
Right, let's go make some award-winning radio, shall we?
While I was recovering, I'm just kind of like, I want to do the radio show, I want to play, I want to hang out with the family. You know, like that's all really I wanted to achieve.
Oh, yeah. I'm back. I'm here.
It means so much to be able to go back and do the show.
Oh, I just felt a little surge of emotion there. I'm back.
He is so grateful for every day. It's like it's been a year of living gratefully.
Yes, very good afternoon and good to be hanging about with you on the radio today.
So yeah, I think he was ecstatic just to have his life back and a second chance. I think it was probably the happiest he's been maybe ever.
Particularly with music and like he put on a tour.
So I'm going to play just we start off with just a nice old jazz swinger.
And that was a really important thing for him and something that I think he'd always really wanted to do.
Or what I'm trying to do when I play this thing or when I'm on the radio, it's all the same thing. I'm just trying to bring joy. And so this is a tune called When I'm Smiling.
Pet Suite. If you see Pet Suite on the sign, that's where we're going. Every 3 months I come here and I get a full body scan. This is to see if any cancer has escaped from the original tumour out into my body.
Have you had 4 glasses of water this morning?
No, I haven't. No. There's a term people use, scanxiety. I'm finding as it goes on, I'm getting a little more anxious each time.
You can pop your arms on the bottom of your head for 15 minutes.
Hopefully we will find out if things progress in any way that we're on it early. But there are no guarantees, and we know that. I think it just makes you more aware of not taking any day for granted.
My PET scans were perfectly clear, but then I started to get bad symptoms, and that's not a good sign. What was revealed was I had cancer in my omentum, which is part of the stomach area.
That was a pretty big shock. The scans were clear up until that point, and it's like it had grown midway through and it just sort of popped up.
This is James's most recent PET scan. He was doing very well and we were out to more than 12 months and it was devastating to find the results, absolutely devastating because it was completely unexpected.
I'll be around.
Yeah, I'll come see you.
Hi, how are you?
So James presented with distant metastasis or distant spread of the disease. It's very likely that those cells that led to the recurrence had spread before any treatment had been offered.
Come into ABC Radio Sydney. Yet again, I've got to tell the audience what's happening to me, and it's really hard. It's like it's as hard as telling family and friends. Unfortunately, I have cancer again. It's come back, and it's at this point in my omentum, which is why we needed Norman, who will explain.
The purpose of the omentum is not entirely certain, but it looks as if it's one of the immune policemen of the abdomen.
Right. So yes, it's doing a crap job as the immune policeman, may I just say at the moment.
That's right.
Yeah. I think I had in my mind something would pop up and they'd just nip that off, you know. Well, it's not quite that.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norman.
I mean, I was offered a choice between a full esophagectomy or this removal of tumour and then subsequent observation.
And I chose the one that was a lesser invasion, the one that had a good chance that I would be perfectly fine. And both procedures really come with a warning that you might get cancer again.
Look at that, you look beautiful.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it's gone up online and on social media.
Yeah. Is Momentum trending yet?
I think it will be, for sure.
I think everybody gave me a lot of information. You know, I tried to understand it, Joanne and I tried to understand it. I think I basically said, well, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so, no, I don't have regrets about doing it. I decided to do it.
So following the diagnosis, I was immediately put onto chemo. And the diagnosis was harsh. Like, you know, the first oncologist I saw, he just went, stage 4, terminal, inoperable, uncurable. You're now basically a palliative patient. I don't want to hear any of those words, let alone in the one sentence, you know. In a lot of ways, there's these strange upsides, of course, that come through these things as well. The family is fantastic. Me, Ruby, Roy and Joanne, great.
My son Roy is a musician. The beautiful thing is he said, do you want to come down and play? Do I? Like, you know, how moving is that?
We had kind of a year where it was like every week we would perform together, and it was a very like beautiful, sacred little space of just like him kind of understanding me and me understanding him, and yeah, it was very beautiful.
You know, we are talking as much as we possibly can, as much as they want to. You know, ask the questions, let's talk about it, let's talk about what it's going to be like afterwards, let's talk about the fact that I'm going to die, let's not shy away from that.
When you're sort of faced with, you have this really strong foundation and then something's going to be taken out of that, it sort of changes your whole world. So, sorry. Yeah, then I think it's brought us a lot closer. We're just spending more time together. Like, I've just sort of spent Christmas with them, and I barely left their apartment. We just sort of sat on the couch watching movies, which is so, you know, not any of our usual vibes.
I've spent the last 7 or 8 months going through various styles of chemo. I can have 3 or 4 days of great fatigue and then I'm sort of fine. The general path I'm on at the moment is I think I can stay on the chemo until it doesn't work, and that could happen next week, it could happen in 3 months. A friend suggested to me, maybe you should do a living wake. And I went, oh, that sounds like fun. The wake's the best part of the funeral. There's often a great buzz in a wake, and what everybody says at wakes is, he would have loved this. And so the notion of a living wake is, if you know that you're terminal, why not have that party beforehand? Why not invite everybody in and let's share the emotion. Tell me how great I am.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Yeah, make an entrance, baby, I say.
There was a lot of apprehension. I had a few calls from people who were like, is this just going to be really disturbing? Like, am I just going to be upset all afternoon?
Nick's a steer on drums.
And so I think once we established what it was, the apprehension lifted.
I want to hear from the people who fed us for the last 6 months. Give me a woo! Woo, 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 woo. Yes, thank you very much.
It's incredibly brave the way that he's facing this whole period. Yeah, so open and so vulnerable, but coming at it with such joy as well.
Who's texting me? Woo!
Very early on, he came across the concept of like, well, what is a good death? And how do you have a good death?
I started to think about the way in which death was so often a time of bitterness, of anger, of regret, of shaking your fist at the universe or your God and going, what the hell's going on here? And I thought, well, I don't want that.
In a sense, it didn't feel brave, it just sort of felt like him. Like it just felt like, yeah, he knows how to do this.
I want my last days to be full of joy and happiness and laughter and jokes and humour and all the things I've loved through life.
He's, still a performer and a man who likes to be on stage. He lives for applause, so...
He's very self-obsessed.
He's not unhappy to be told that he's amazing.
Yeah, he needs to hear it a bunch right now.
Come up and remind me of some stupid thing we did together. Come up and remind me of some adventure. This is the gift that I can take with me into these next months, which are going to be tough. This is nourishment for my soul, that I'm getting from you today. So thank you.
There's much you do through this process which is incredibly confronting, and one thing we decided to do was look at voluntary assisted dying, euthanasia. And that sort of took no thought at all. There is a great relief in knowing that should things get too bad, you can stop it. And that's as much for Joanne and the kids as anybody, as it is for me, really. It's very reassuring to know that it's there, to cut out the suffering at the very end. That's a very civilised kind of process to have. Of course there's been grief, of course there's been sadness, of course there's been, I've been overwhelmed by despair at various points. But how do you come through that to then be largely living it in a way that is, in a way that's more accepting? I really hate the Dylan Thomas poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night." How about you go gentle into that good night? What's with the rage? What's with the anger? There's friends to be with, there's family to be with, there's life to be experienced, there's a sky to contemplate, there's beauty to be seen. Don't start mourning before you have to. In some ways I'm lucky in that I have lived a good life, like in the sense that I've done lots of things I wanted to do, I've been happy. I've got a wife I love, I've got children I love. You understand that we all die. We all die. I just happen to know that mine's coming.